Don't give people in Louisiana an opportunity to party. Not that we need one, but don't give us one. Like a national championship parade. 8 floats, as we talked about on Friday with Robert Munson. It was basically the path that the team went on these floats, the team and the staff, was basically the path that the Golden Band from Tigerland takes as it marches from the music building down Victory Hill. So, I mean, it wasn't a far distance for them to go. I mean, how far is that from the music building to like down Victory Hill? I mean, that can't even be a quarter of a mile. Like, it can't even be that far. A tenth of a mile? I mean, it's super short. And I know, Munson told us on Friday that it was going to take about 40 minutes. I have no idea how that was going to. Paul, you went to the parade itself? So where did you stand? Because I didn't go to the parade. Where did you stand?
We were right outside the PMAC.
So then I guess could you tell when it started?
Not really. Not from where I was.
Okay. So best guess how long it took?
They said it was going to start at like 11. So it was by us probably 30 minutes.
Yeah. I mean,
it went by quick.
They obviously didn't have far to go, but still, the thing that was most impressive to me was when you looked at the shots down Victory Hill, like the crowd shots, it legitimately looked like a game day. How deep what? Both of you are just waving at me. What?
Well, no, he had lost your screen, but he got it back.
Okay. Like, the crowd shots legitimately looked like a game day, as deep as people were. Now, the whole campus wasn't like that, obviously. And the fact that the Maravich Center, they opened it up and sat about 13,000, and it was packed, more so than a basketball game, but we got to talk about that too, y'all, because y'all got to be there tomorrow for this basketball game. But nonetheless, it was packed inside the Maravich Center as well, which was phenomenal to see. And for me, this was, Paul's putting up a shot right now. It's an incredible shot. I mean, just floor seating, and then it looked like every seat in the entire venue was taken to where they had to stop letting people in. I remember the celebrations in 03 and 07. 03, they did a parade in downtown Baton Rouge, like fire trucks and stuff like that. And it was a joint parade with LSU and Southern, because LSU had won the BCS championship and Southern had won the Black College National Championship. And so they did a joint parade. And then in 07, they did the celebration in Tiger Stadium, and it was freezing that day. Very cool, but freezing. This was just different on all kinds of levels. A couple of observations from what actually transpired. If there's one thing of the entire celebration that, in my opinion, is going to stand out and last and linger, more so than even just the crowd, I think it has to be Ed Ogeron's comments. And when Ed he was last to speak, and when Ed spoke to the crowd, the thing he said about the players on this team, I think, is the one thing from Saturday more than any other that's going to be remembered.
This is a player-driven program. This is all about the players. They did it. And I'll say this to you. We started working last January 17th. They worked for a year. Ongoing skill development. They decided they're not going out in bars. They decided they're going to class. They decided they're going to do the right thing. They're going to graduate. They decided that having character is cool. Yeah. They had discipline. But the biggest thing that this team had was want to. When you want to do something, you can accomplish anything in your life.
The line about them deciding character was cool, I think, is the defining line or moment from Saturday's celebration. And it really does define this team. When you think about, as many times as Ed has said this throughout the year, this was a team, the thing that stands out to me more than any other is that during the summer, they had Saturday 7-on-7s and nobody missed. Again, that's player-led. No coaches. It's voluntary. It's just guys getting the team together and on Saturdays, and nobody missed. When you get the entirety of your roster together to have player-led practices on Saturdays during the summer, that tells you a lot about the buy-in, which Ed talked about there, which is so very true. A couple of other moments from Saturday that I thought were fantastic. I love the Heisman presentation. I think we all learned something maybe collectively that we didn't know, which was that it was Steve Spurrier back in the 60s, in 66, who gave his Heisman to Florida when the Heisman Trust decided, all right, we're going to make a replica. So there will be 2 copies, one for the player and then one for the school. So Saturday, there was a member of the Heisman Trust on hand who was there with LSU's copy of the Heisman Trophy that will reside forever in Baton Rouge, and they allowed Joe Burrow to present it to LSU, which was awesome. And when Burrow, if you missed how it all transpired, Hester was there and he talked to the 4 captains. He talked to Jacoby Stevens. He talked to Rashard Lawrence. He talked to Lloyd Cushenberry, and then to Burrow. Here was Burrow talking. Okay. Burrow talked about his Heisman moments, talked about preparation throughout the season, and he also, he and Hester both pointed out Steve Ensminger, who did acknowledge the crowd as well, which was a pretty cool moment. Two other things from the Saturday that I thought were impactful. One, during the Heisman presentation, when the member of the Heisman Trust was there, he did reference the late Billy Cannon. And I thought it was super appropriate that Billy's daughter, Bunny, and his widow, Miss Dot, were both there. And Miss Dot was crying during that moment, which was obviously very emotional. And this much I know, and anyone who had a chance over the years to talk to Billy Cannon knew this was always clear. Even if you had a minute or an hour with him, there's a couple of things that were always obvious. Number one, he knew his status in the history of LSU football and where that stood. He knew what his name, what his legacy, he knew what all of that was. And he was perfectly fine shouldering that burden. I don't mean a burden in a negative way, but in some respects it is. When you are you and you can't go anywhere without being considered you, that's can be difficult, but he embraced it. He was always places where he would sign autographs or be visible as much as possible in pictures. Every time he was asked to be a dignitary at those types of things, he was there, and he represented LSU in the history and his legacy in the 58 team always. And he was proud to do that. That's one. But two, he always would have welcomed company in that Heisman conversation. I remember when we talked in 2015, when it looked like, as that season was going along, that Leonard was going to win the Heisman. He was very excited about the possibility of having someone else from LSU represent LSU in that Heisman fraternity. I think he would have been thrilled. I think the emotion of that moment overwhelmed Mrs. Cannon there on Saturday, which is something that I know I'll remember, which was a very cool marrying of the two eras on Saturday, which I loved. The other was Greg Sankey getting booed. And I'm not going to tell you I loved Greg Sankey getting booed, but I kind of loved the reaction to Greg Sankey getting booed. Obviously, the mayor was there, the governor was there, the member of the Heisman Trust was there, representative of the American Football Coaches Association was there because LSU got the Crystal Football, which is the coaches trophy, and then also got the College Football Playoff trophy, which is like the golden waffle cone. And then the commissioner, the SEC commissioner, is there as well, and he was allowed to say a few words. And he got booed, and some people wondered, I know there's a couple of people on the beat now who weren't on the beat 3 years ago at LSU who were wondering why Greg Sankey got booed. Well, that all stems from 2016, the LSU Florida Hurricane Matthew debacle, how that all transpired. And LSU fans have not forgotten, and it kind of felt like Roger Goodell at the NFL draft, or really any commissioner at their respective drafts, except for Adam Silver, who always gets cheered. He's kind of a liked guy, which is atypical for the rest of league commissioners. But nonetheless, Sankey getting booed was a brief moment of levity, nonetheless. And then he turns around and says, "But I got you beer," so beer in stadium, which is something he opposed, but ultimately did happen. So it was a great day on campus at the Maravich Center with a packed house as LSU celebrated its 4th football national championship. Job well done to everybody who organized it, put it together, and all the fans who embraced it. And I know I've said it before, but it bears mentioning yet again. 03 was special because it was the first in 45 years, and many LSU fans wondered if we'd ever see one. And a lot of LSU fans had not seen a national championship and maybe had friends or family who had come and gone without ever getting to witness a national championship. 07 was different, but special mostly because of the improbability, because of how the Auburn game ended with the Flynn to Bird, the Alabama game and how that ended with Chad Jones forcing the turnover late, the Florida game with the late game heroics, the 2 triple overtime games, all of the things that had to happen the day of the SEC championship game to get LSU back. Like, we know it. The improbability of 07 made it feel predestined. This one, I feel like LSU fans embraced in a very different manner because they realized early on how special this season was, how special this team was, and is and will be remembered as arguably the greatest team in the history of college football. I think their resume absolutely stands alone. Now, whether or not on a neutral field, if they played the 95 Nebraska or 01 Miami or 04 USC or whoever, that's a debate that no one will ever answer, that'll rage on forever. But you can't, like I said last week, you can't have the conversation anymore without including LSU. But I think LSU fans during the season knew that. They were very much aware of it and bathed in the success of this team all season, which was really cool to see. And it came to a culminating head on a Saturday celebrating the championship there at the PMAC with a packed crowd.